5G Techritory 2022, and this one is also phygital, where we have people and speakers on stage or online or in video format, and you can also join in all the possible ways. You can reach us. Please use the platform to enjoy fully this event and all the opportunities. Now let's talk about Metaverse. And next topic is the Metaverse, and let's see, what about that? The Metaverse has been one of the hottest topics in the industry this and previous year. We have seen that many companies have their own definition of the Metaverse and are crafting their plans accordingly, although the question remains, which will be the end product? What will be the real value, and what technological advancements will it take to make it come to life? So how to use it? What is it? And who knows the correct answer? We have quite a panel here, and also a great moderator, Sylvia Lu, the head of technology strategy at u-blox, which is the Swiss wireless chipset vendor, and also board member of 5G ACIA. Please welcome.
Thank you so much, and I'm so delighted to welcome everybody here, but also the ones viewing online, to join at this panel session on Metaverse. So indeed, as we know, Metaverse has been one of the hottest topic in the industry, and of course it is in our session to find out more about it. So just before introducing our panelists, back in September actually I brought a team of EMBA students from Cambridge, and we were here in Riga, carried out a study on Metacity, and we found out that actually Riga, which is the capital city of Latvia, has the potential to become basically the leading European successful Metacity. And of course, now today, after 2 months, back here again in Riga and joining this fabulous panel, to really discuss and have a conversation what it takes to really make Metaverse a commercial reality, and also bring the values to the society, citizens, but also wider, if you like, country, national, and world. So with that, I'd like to introduce our fabulous panel. So we have Peter, which is Head of Strategy and Business Development from Nokia Europe. And we have Paolo Campoli, which is VP Global SP Segment Leader from Cisco Systems. We also have Guillaume, which is Global Connectivity Policy at Meta. And last but not least, sitting next to me, which is Ben Zukolowski, which is Vice President of Government Affairs, EMA, and Managing Director for Germany and Austria of Qualcomm. So a warm welcome. Let's start with the first question. Of course, just to briefly step back, so this session we can cover 3 topics, general topics, from the what, why, and how. So essentially we start with the definition of Metaverse, why in terms of what is actually the value we're looking for, and for you guys as well. And thirdly, we're going to land it into really the commercial value and how to really make that impact. So our panelists will bring some use cases and also really the gaps we need to address. So that's the flow today. And of course, now let's go with the definition. First of all, on that Metaverse definition, we know it is an unsettled market, and there's lots of definitions. We don't have a common standards definition yet. So really I'd like to invite the panelists to give a few words. What's your understanding of Metaverse? So let's start with you, Peter. That's on my list first.
Thank you, Sylvia. Well, everyone in this room is probably desperately hoping that somebody actually has a definition, and I'll give it a shot, but I want to say first that I think one of the basic tenets of the Metaverse is a digital physical fusion, which is the Metaverse is not isolated from the real world, right? And we're seeing multiple metaverses, not just the consumer metaverses, which is probably the one that's easiest to imagine, which is a digital immersion, right? But we also have industry and enterprise metaverses, which have completely different use cases that are incredibly powerful. So a colleague of mine actually has a definition, which I'll steal from her, which is that the metaverse is a fully or partial digital experience which brings together people, places, and information in real time in a way which transcends the physical world in order to solve a problem. And I quite like that definition because it covers a lot of key tenets of this, the digital-physical fusion. It covers the locality, it covers immersion, it also covers the fact that it's supposed to do something more than the physical world can do. And it's supposed to actually, hopefully, for many parts, to solve problems.
Well, that's a very concise definition. That's going to be a good start and challenge for the rest of the panelists. So can we come to Paolo, and then we will have Guillaume and Ben.
Sure. I normally try to test my definition of something new with my family, and if they fall asleep after 20 seconds, it means it's too sophisticated and too structured. So keep it simple from our perspective, and I think we are in great agreement. It's the next generation of digital experience and digital interaction, and you can just train with that, and we will elaborate later on the set of capabilities. We have a sense of what the metaverse could be, right? There are flavors of that around us in terms of enhanced collaboration or enhanced gaming or volumetric video. But defining it today, does it make sense, or should we envision the building blocks that will create this new experience? So with my family, say it's the next frontier of digital environment. I'll let them dream.
That's perfect starting point. And Guillaume?
Yeah, pretty much in line with what Paolo was saying. For us, it's really just the next evolution of the internet. If you remember, we started with text, then we had some pictures, then we shared some video. The next natural evolution is to be more immersed in the content, whether it's audio immersion, whether it's video immersion. And just shameless plug, if you want to try some first experience of the metaverse, we got some demo in a little room just across the corridor. So if people want to experience it for themselves, I think it's the best way to understand what the metaverse could be, is to try these first pockets of metaverse and see how it could all be integrated together.
Yeah, fantastic. And that's really good segue to your use case later as well. Ben, last but not least.
Yeah, so I think for Qualcomm, really, Metaverse is the vision of the future digital community. It's obviously a virtual immersive environment in which enterprises will gain huge benefits for adapting, for designing their industrial processes, their R&D and innovation processes, where obviously people will gather to interact, to train, to practice, to work, to learn, to socialize in a completely new and different way. So in this regard, really, it's the next or the evolution of the internet with a huge potential from an economic standpoint, from a social standpoint, but also, last not least, from an environmental standpoint, I think.
Wow. So I guess probably next year when we come back again, we still have this definition, but a really common thing that I'm hearing is digital experience, next generation of the internet, which I think a lot of us also echo with as well. So, and that's one of the findings I would like to mention, and as a segue to the next question. One of the findings from the MaxCity, Riga MaxCity project, the global metaverse market estimation is about 600 to 1.5 billion US dollars, trillions actually by 2030. And the top three metaverse market contributions are virtual assets, AR, VR, or mixed reality, and network and cloud infrastructure. And I want to touch upon on the cloud and infrastructure side, because we have two key stakeholders in the ecosystem, Nokia, of course, and Cisco. So I'd like to ask you, from the infrastructure side, from your perspective, what is the real value of Metaverse for you specifically? So Paolo, if I can start with you.
Well, from an infrastructure perspective, I think it's going to be a major, the Metaverse is going to be a major catalyst of distribution of intelligence and edge capabilities, first and foremost. At the opening, there there was this discussion about the real-time nature of the internet, right? And what allows to do today for, as an example, connected soldier and so on. So imagine when this will transcend our current experience. So it will be the hologram supplemented with all the senses we have, touch, smell, hearing, seeing, and so on. And think about the implications on the network itself, not only in terms of bandwidth, of course, that's the most immediate reflection one could make, but in terms of real-time capabilities, in terms of where information is processed. Today you may have experience like volumetric video, which is this sport event with subjective point of view. It doesn't work with the current model of the cloud. It has to be pushed very, very close to where you wear your goggle or where you are in the holographic experience for this to be a real-time and local process. So there will be a transformation, a catalyzing effect on transformation of network, edge cloud, and security, because the surface of attack with something like that so distributed will increase exponentially. And so security will not be a bolt-on, will be an attribute of this cloud networking environment. So for us, of course, we dream of this happening fast enough in order to catalyze the digital inclusion that is it's a fundamental layer, if you like, to enable all of this.
Yeah, that's really good. And if I can go to Peter, what's your view on that?
So I very much agree with Paolo, but when we look at the traffic model scenarios for the coming decade, the metaverse uptake is really one of the X factors that can have an accelerated factor on overall network usage. Especially if we look at AR, VR adoption, which is mobile, because that would put a lot of potential into mobile network expansions and also edge cloud computing, as Paolo was talking about. Right? So traffic has potential as a consequence of the metaverse. But another element which I think is very powerful within industry and enterprise segments is simulation. So we talk a lot about animation, about making a more immersive experience in gaming, for example, through the metaverse, but simulation is incredibly powerful. To create digital twins where you can do what-if scenarios. What if you have an outage there? What if you're missing a resource there? And just simulate that, that is incredibly powerful. So we're seeing traffic potential, we're seeing immersion potential through animation, but we're also seeing simulation potential, which I think is incredibly important in industry and enterprise segments.
Mm. Yeah, that's fantastic. Of course, you guys are providing those enablers to unlock the value. And I'm going to next to Ben on the chipset vendor's perspective, and also then later to next to the Guillaume on the Meta platform perspective. Ben?
Yes, thank you. So, I mean, as I said, the metaverse, we expect to change entirely the way people socialize, they interact with each other. So this per se already, I think, is a value. But if we look more on, for example, economic value, obviously, there will be completely new products, new markets being created through the metaverse, right? May that be in entertainment, the way we consume music, the way we consume gaming. Banking sector, we expect to also largely benefit from the metaverse. And then there's another area which was mentioned before, which is called maybe more the industrial metaverse, right? So the way enterprises can use the immersive virtual environment to improve industrial processes, to improve engineering processes, become much more efficient. For example, to simulate advanced manufacturing processes, very important for especially European industries, right? That will save a lot of time, that will save a lot of money. It will definitely improve the quality of services, the quality of products, and therefore offers huge potential for companies for efficiency gains.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. So Guillaume, of course, Meta has been the pioneer in metaverse space. I'm very interested to hear your view in terms of what metaverse mean, real value of metaverse for you guys, and what's really ahead of, the roadmap. What does it look like?
Well, for some of this application, it's just an evolution. So you take 3D design. If you're a car designer, you're trying to design PCs. I mean, designing PCs through computer is nothing new. But the ability to turn around, to look it in space, that is new. So that will help them, make them go a bit quicker. But you take a technician repairing an engine of an airplane, the ability, as the Prime Minister was pointing to this morning, to tell you exactly which tool to use, where to use it, how to use it, that's completely new. The other domain where I see a complete revolution is everything that has to do with learning, education, and the fact that in the past, I mean, you can do all kind of textbook learning and it's all okay, but you don't have the interaction. Now you will be able to learn with interactive people, just as if you were there, and that changes everything. Think about all the jobs that have to do with dealing with a customer, dealing with someone else, having a real human interaction. You cannot learn that without doing it. Well, now you can, because you're going to have this interaction in the metaverse. So for some of these domains, it's just revolutionize how people are doing things. I mean, one example that we have is the Children's Doctors Hospital in Los Angeles. They basically train the nurse on how to react not just to the technical procedure, but to the distress of the parents and how you deal with the emotion that is happening. So that's the kind of thing that you can do only in the metaverse.
Yeah, that's really good. Can you give us more examples on really how you're realizing and showcase and really help people understand the value of Metaverse?
Well, for example, if you're an architect and you're trying to explain to your customers how the house that they are buying will look like, sometimes it can be difficult. I mean, you understand the maps, they don't. And so having them walking through the house, telling you what they want to change, that's a lot easier. Just practical things like if you're a retail chain and you want to help your customers to understand how they're going to look like in a dress, well, it's a lot easier if they can actually see themselves, go around, see how it looks from all angles. So it's just little example like that that really changes how you can bring value by making people really feel and touch what you're talking about.
I'm going to give you a bonus question. What other sector you see will be really taking Metaverse as day one use case?
Anything, I mean, education has been amazing. I mean, one great example is the University of Michigan. They just deployed 16,000 Wi-Fi access points on their campus, precisely for this kind of next generation internet application. They don't know exactly what it's going to be, but they understand that they will need this kind of massive connectivity to do this kind of next step application, and that is going to help their students. So we really see all the education domain really embracing the metaverse. Obviously, gaming was there from day one.
And if I can add to that, we heard the Prime Minister in Latvia this morning talking about the Minister of Defense virtual reality demo they're doing here with NATO. And I think that's an excellent example of a metaverse actual use case, right? Which is an augmented reality enhancement that helps soldiers in the field deal with situations, right? Helps mechanics fix things by actually having expertise overlaying into their field of vision what they should do in a certain situation. And that is an incredibly powerful way to use what is now called the metaverse with augmented reality.
Yeah, I guess Ben and Paula, you got also use cases. So perhaps Paula and
Well, the first thing that came to our mind when the metaverse was a little bit more defined in terms of capabilities was to augment the collaboration experience. Right, you had some of the flagship collaboration platforms that normally are, very immersive, but they still are based on screens and 2D interaction. So adding to this the hologram, which is a very viable technology as we speak, just gives you a sense of what it means to be more immersed. That's going away. Be more immersed into the experience. The other thing we notice is there is a desire from the big studio streaming content, on content distribution networking, not only to monetize the CDN itself, but also to be able to create the new wave of experience. So things like volumetric video, which implies the ability to have subjective perspective from multiple angles, is something we did on top of the CDN platform. So I think it's going on and off. It's not very metaversey, right? It's more classical audio-visual setup. So the two use cases are enhanced collaboration with the hologram experience embedded into things like WebEx, volumetric video on CDN. And these are things you can touch. Everything else, I think, are capabilities that you can try to pull together like a Lego block. And there is not much point in projecting out into the future. It's more experimenting and allowing programmers to pull those building blocks together and really create the new applications, if you like.
That's the interesting side of Lego building blocks, and get what you have first. And Ben?
Well, maybe to other use cases which are very interesting and offer great benefit is one, definitely healthcare. So complex surgeries which a doctor can train before actually doing the actual surgery in the metaverse 100 of times. That's going to provide huge benefit. And back to my previous example, industrial production processes. If you think of an automotive factory which has to be equipped for producing a new car, usually that takes several months. Then after the start of production, you face quality issues, you face problems with getting the process right. To simulate that in a virtual environment will definitely cost you a lot of time and thereby save you a lot of money.
Yeah, so we touched upon the commercial, healthcare, defense, industrial, and also education. So it's amazing, broad range of different sectors which might benefit from Metaverse on day one. Yeah. So I see nodding. That's a good sign. So are we there yet, though? You know, are we? If you really want to realize the full value, as all you guys were sharing earlier, what it takes, what are the gaps in terms of technological, business model-wise, or regulatory policy? What are still the gaps there we need to do to really finalize or maximize the value creation? So if I can start with Ben, first of all.
Sure. So I mean, where Qualcomm comes into play and what our role is in the ecosystem, we are really the developer, the innovator, and the provider there with foundational technologies needed to make the metaverse become reality, right? And that is, of course, first all technologies related to 5G, where Qualcomm, as coming from the mobile business, is particularly having a focus on and is strong in artificial intelligence, sensor, graphics, audio, related equipment, and really to make that work for metaverse and XR devices. You find Qualcomm technology these days in basically all XR devices in the market. The challenge always is to make that at the best performance, to ensure that the technology has the lowest possible power consumption, to integrate that in the best way into the device, because obviously experience in the metaverse will be to a large extent through glasses, through 3D, and that is actually where Qualcomm has its strength and provides the technology. Also, in terms of enablers and what is needed, definitely, since this is a 5G conference, digital connectivity and the infrastructure will be of key importance. And there we also see that Europe, compared to Asia, compared to other regions in the world, could definitely be quicker, could do more, also in terms of innovative 5G technologies, for example, talking about millimeter wave technologies. There's definitely more we could do, and that is important. And then also maybe touching on another area, which is regulation, which is, let's say, a broader societal discussion that we need to have about the metaverse, and to get the regulatory framework right. Safety obviously is important. We need to create trust among those who will use the metaverse. And then also important is to consider the metaverse from a regulatory standpoint as a new ecosystem which needs to still grow, which needs to develop, but which needs to be open, horizontal, and therewith open also for new enterprises, new businesses, startups to provide services, right? To avoid gatekeeping, to avoid silos to be created. That is, from Qualcomm perspective, regulatory-wise, very important.
I like the point about creating the environment for trust for the customers in enterprise. So I'm going to also go around the tape, the panelists here. So Paolo,
Well, we're very much in line with Qualcomm's position. I think the exacerbating issues around the metaverse when we look at the technology the way it is today. One is the cost structure, right? I mean, just today, to deliver the amount of bandwidth we are delivering with 5G, and then, you know, just around the corner, enhancement of 5G, the cost structure is little to non-sustainable, right? Traffic booming, there is no revenue to justify, you know, that type of traffic, so the unit production cost of traffic has to decrease over time. Imagine to scale this, right, to the size of the metaverse. So the sustainability of that in terms of an affordable form of connectivity. That's about cost structure. It's also about connecting the 3 billion of unconnected people on the planet, not to make the metaverse the next generation of digital divide. So that's a very important point. The other one is sustainability. When you move from 4G to 5G, you have this densification of, you know, cell site, and the power consumed is increasing dramatically, right? There are form of efficiencies in 5G that allow to make the overall thing more sustainable. What is going to happen with the metaverse? How do we make this proliferation of Wi-Fi, 5G, edge cloud, devices, haptics, and so on and so forth? How you make it within the sustainability journey that every company is committing to, right? That's a big question mark. I think there are technology options for that, but they should be kept under control. The last but not least point is identity. When you enter into the metaverse, what is your identity, and how is the identity preserved from system to system? Okay, it's a physical identity, the logical identity, the security identity. Even today, when you move from 5G to Wi-Fi, so nothing too farther out in terms of future, you tend to have these issues about, you know, what is your policy and identity in those two subsystems. Imagine in the metaverse. So there are solutions to each of those points, but they need to be part of a cross-industry alignment, right? So people on this panel and more industry players aligning on this type of framework. Cost structure, sustainability, identity seems to be the major points.
Yeah, that's a great summary also of the 4 points. Now, Peter.
Yeah. So what do I think? Well, what we have been doing for the past decade in our R&D efforts is really to develop the connectivity infrastructure that underpins and enables the metaverse, right? And we continue to do that. And if there are network requirements from the metaverse that even 5G can't sustain, that becomes part of the 6G standardization work which is ongoing. But I want to mention that there is a really beautiful marriage between private networks and digital twins, which creates very powerful opportunities in industry and enterprise, right? So we have a base station factory in Oulu in northern Finland, for example, where we have implemented a private network and a digital twin of the factory, and that enables us to dramatically improve productivity and quality in our production line. And many early use cases around digital twins have great potential, especially in connection with private networks. So we see a lot of power in that, and that has basically all the prerequisites to succeed already today. Right? But if you look at the wider adoption into virtual reality, augmented reality, mobility on the consumer space, then I think devices, as you talked about, is going to be something that needs to develop further to enable that work, right? But we already see the opportunities in enterprise and industry, and we're working heavily on those. Right?
And finally but not least, Guillaume.
Yeah, I'm going to expand to something that hasn't been touched so much, but which is a device. If you remember, mobile broadband, it really took off with the iPhone, and as connectivity improved, then the use cases improved. But the starting case was really the device itself and how people related to it. We're very proud of the devices that we have today, but we know we're close to finished. I mean, ideally, you would have something that looks more like Peter's glasses and hopefully Paolo's glasses someday, something really like intuitive and light and that can be worn all day. We're not there yet. So there's an incredible amount of integration. It's way harder to do than a smartphone. And that also relies on connectivity, and that's where it's interesting. Because the way that you make these devices comfortable is by enabling them to do as little processing as possible and having the processing done somewhere else. And that relies on local connectivity. So this ability to have local connectivity, having the processing somewhere else, that will make the device better, smaller, easier for the users. And that's what you want. You want the user to forget that they have something on their head, forget that it is another device, and just use it in an intuitive manner.
That's fantastic. We touch quite broad areas from the connectivity, technology, regulatory, platform trust, but also the device. So we'll leave also some time for the question on the floor. So just to wrap up, so final questions in 30 seconds to all the panelists. Your top recommendations, tips for developers, technologists, scientists, or regulatory policymakers. What would be your 30 seconds recommendation? So I'll start from Guillaume.
Well, I'll go with two. The first one is make sure you got lots of local connectivity, make sure people can deploy Wi-Fi in their home environment, in their work, to have that, and build on the fiber plan to make sure that fiber goes in as many buildings as possible. And the second one is make sure that we have interoperability in all the different platforms and the kind of identity that can be shared so that people can not have several fragmented experience of Metaverse, but one unified experience where they just go and it's their Metaverse, their devices, and their identity.
Yeah, perfect. Peter?
I would say look beyond the hype, that is, and look at where can you in industry and in enterprise create value through digital physical fusion examples. That is where I think there's a lot of potential for the world to really improve through the Metaverse.
Perfect. Paolo?
I'd probably say no single stack, composable metaverse, composable modules. Someone said the revolution we're living now is called SMAC, social, mobility, analytics, and cloud, right? Which I think is surrounding us. What are the building blocks, the next, capital letters that will combine the metaverse? I think we need to stay focused on creating those capabilities, but no single stack, right? Make them composable.
Sounds good.
Yes. So two advices also from my side. First, as I said, focus on getting the digital connectivity infrastructure right. Strong emphasis on 5G deployment, innovative 5G technologies. And then secondly, also to benefit from the ecosystem to be developed, create as a regulator, as a government, an environment which rewards innovation, which rewards an R&D friendly environment, which rewards risky investment into innovation, to attract startups, to attract enterprises, to use the metaverse, and also to adapt products and business models for the metaverse.
Yeah, thank you very much for the panelists. That's been fantastic insight. And let's see if we have any questions.
Yes, we also made a little poll, and during this discussion panel, our audience and also online were answering the question, which industry would benefit the most from a working, widely adopted metaverse? And 34% says education, gaming is 33%, even less, although at the beginning that was the most popular one. Real estate is out with 4%, and then advertising comes in with 29%. So it's quite equal, except real estate. Is there any comments, very briefly, somebody on this?
On real estate?
I mean, on the poll, do you see that the same way?
Well, I would say that the choices were too limited.
Oh, right.
I think
The other would win.
Yeah, I would. I mean, if I think about production possibilities, right, that I just mentioned as an example, another example I heard about recently is that they're mapping the human immune system into a digital twin in order to develop vaccines better. I mean, there's so much potential in industry and enterprise on top of the example. So I think we need more examples in the poll.
Because general public still sees that just as another way of virtual reality or augmented reality, another pair of glasses or goggles.
Yeah.
So probably that's the problem.
Yeah, I think there is an entire environment of fast prototyping that will benefit multiple industries. That means not only going fast, but also reducing the barrier, right, for innovators. And so that opens to a new wave of imagination. I think we're limited to what we experience today. But with this notion of capabilities, think about fast prototyping as a proxy to a number of use cases that we probably can't even imagine today.
All right, and then one more question. You touched it already, but still, Yvette is asking, Metaverse will provide broad range of opportunities. At the same time, it raises questions on how to ensure that it has been used in an appropriate ways. Like I said, it was mentioned already, but it will be responsibility of whom and what level. It is always the question of regulation, responsibility, security, safety, and so on. Anybody?
I think maybe a general comment. With every new and emerging technology, you need, as a regulator, to find the right balance between, of course, reacting to obvious challenges, right? Security, privacy, and reflect that in regulation. At the same time, not over-regulate from the beginning at a standpoint where the ecosystem, where industries and enterprises attached to the ecosystem have yet not emerged fully, to not over-regulate at an early point in time, which would then prevent actually and limit the appetite to engage in this ecosystem.
Convenience always wins the security.
See it another way, like if you think about all that we've been through, we've been learning to live in this digital world, and that was very hard, and we developed lots of regulation for that. Peter was mentioning that the Metaverse is about bringing the digital world and the real world together, and perhaps we can reuse all these things that we learned about the internet and make that something easy.
All right.
I think the security element is, of course, really important to deal with, but we should, I think, try to not focus about all the problems. But because one of the things that the metaverse and virtual augmented reality can do is to really de-risk things that are either very, very expensive or very, very dangerous to simulate, right? Which is incredibly useful for society in general, right? So there are ways in which we de-risk society, not just increase risk.
But it was a very good way to look at it. As you said it before, that it should solve some problems, and it should do more than reality can. All right. Sylvia, anything to finish with?
Well, I think I'd like to basically also mention the MetaCity project that we did for 5G Techritory. If anybody's interested to really have a look what Metaverse means for Riga, then contact 5G Techritory team and they will show you the outcome of the study.
Thank you very much. Thank you.